Greetings to the Trinidad and Tobago district. My name is Carlos Gordon. I am a missionary uh, serving in the Church of the Nazarene. I am from Spanish Town, St. Catherine, Jamaica, right there in the West Indies. I am 35 years old and I have been serving on the Africa region as the regional finance coordinator for the continent of Africa for a little over 3 years now. I grew up in the Church of the Nazarene. I've been a Nazarene all my life. I grew up in the St. John's Greenacres Church of the Nazarene. That was in my community. It was established, I think, 35 years ago, actually. We were celebrating 35 years of our local church there being in my community in Greenacres, Spanish Town. Um, my parents would normally send my younger sister and I to church. They would not always come to church, but they would ensure that we would go to the church that was in the community. And so, every Sunday we would be sent to church for Sunday school. But I remember the first time I was invited to church, it was by one of the young people at church. I was still a young, maybe about 8, 9 thereabout, and it was during Christmas time. And I remember the youth pastor or pastor in training at the time. He was there and they were giving out little balloons for the kids, and I went up and I got my balloon, and I was just so happy. And I kept coming to the church after that. My parents kept on sending me, because they found a caring environment, people who cared for their children. After a few years, my younger sister would come with me to church, and then I got baptized, accepted the Lord when I was about 10 or 11, and my sister accepted as well. So we were the first two in our household to get baptized. Luckily, our parents didn't stop us. They said, well, if they believe in God and they believe that He's calling them, they're not going to stop them from being baptized. They did get some scrutiny from their friends, and even some of the folks at church were saying, we were too young to get baptized, but we still, our pastor, Reverend Joseph Anthony Brown, he still baptized us, and we have been in the church ever since, been active members all this time. Then a few years later, my mom got baptized, and then my dad got baptized. So you can say that my younger sister and I led our parents to the Lord, which is normally the other way around. But we thank God that the family is together in the household of faith. I served in several areas in my local church, and on the district, for the Jamaica East district. I I served as NYI president for my local church, vice president at one point in time, treasurer at one point in time. I was a part of the praise and worship team. I started a sign language group, for our church. I was not necessarily fully involved in the sports ministry, but I did help to coordinate the sporting activities because I really don't do a lot of sports. But I like coordinating. I think I have a gifting in administration. And so organizing, planning, that's what I would do. Assisting with the organization of banquets and events that we were having. We did a 5K road race for our church, and a health fair that I helped to organize as well. I was I helped with the dance group. I didn't actually dance in public, but I did help with the with the dance group that we had, the dance ministry there. Um, we would have or old folks or some of our shut-ins who would not be able to get to church if they didn't have transportation, and so we would do that. We would collect clothing, articles of clothing for persons who are in need, and they would come to my house and we will do distribution. I used to assist my mom, and some other of the members of the church with cleaning the church on a Saturday evening. I probably I'm forgetting quite a few things that I was involved with, but anything that needed to be done and that I believe that I could assist, I would assist in my local church. On the district, I was the youth and missions coordinator at one point in time. I served as the district NYI vice president. We helped with the organization of CARICAC. I don't know if you guys remember that some years ago. I think it was 2010 or so. We did, or we participated, or we helped to organize, or folks to travel to Focus in Panama. I think that was in 2012 or 2013. NMI in our local church, for some strange reason, was always seen as the old people's meeting. And so, in our local church, when I was NYI president, we created a specific position that was our liaison between the young people and the older folks who were at NMI meetings. But it was a beautiful engagement in that I don't think we fully at that time, as young people, understood what NMI did and the influence that it had, and that we are part of a global church. And it is within that interaction that young people started to realize how much of an impact the small things that we do when we contribute to Alabaster and the World Evangelism Fund, what the effect was on the wider world. And even though many of us might not have a calling to, leave your home like I did, it was emphasized that we played a part in the spreading of the gospel globally. And that was kind of exciting for our young people. It exposed us to different cultures. I remember even the NMI expos that we had, when we would dress up in the traditional garments of these other countries, attempt to make their food. And I remember once when we were assigned certain countries in Africa, and I remember how I felt inspired by what was happening there. And here I am now serving in Africa. I wouldn't say that all the cuisine that we cooked to represent the African continent or countries in the African continent were exactly the same, but I appreciated the fact that we were exposed to that even before having setting foot on the continent. And we actually had our first mission exchange group from Jamaica to the US, to York, Pennsylvania. We did a youth work and witness type team with the Still Meadow Church of the Nazarene, which the Jamaica East District has a partnership with. So I helped to organize that for our team to go, and that was like the first time a group of young people left Jamaica to do mission work in the US. So that was great. God really blessed that encounter. We still have partnerships and friendships from that even today. NMI was a beautiful, beautiful avenue inside of our church as Nazarenes that we can use to inspire young people, to help them to see just beyond the four corners of whichever country they are located in now, to say you're a part of a global family, a global village, and that we are connected in Christ. That's what NMI did for me in my local church and on my district. So, educationally, I have a first degree in experimental biology, postgraduate diploma in business administration, an MBA in international business management, and I am a globally certified project manager. Um, in terms of what I used to do back home, I worked at the University of the West Indies for Mona campus for a number of years. I worked in the Department of Management Studies and then the Mona School of Business and Management. I was also a lecturer at the University College of the Caribbean, and also there is a heart training institute that I used to lecture as yet. I had a private project management consultancy business. I used to go in and do trainings for companies, and it's quite lucrative. I also, after leaving that, I worked with the Jamaica Public Service Company Limited for the country there, the Light and Power Company for the island. I worked also I returned to the University of the West Indies to work in the principal, the office of the principal, for a few years after that. Um, I'm trying to remember. I had a farming business that we used to supply peppers and sweet potatoes to supermarkets and to make hot pepper sauces and such. We had several other small businesses that I used to be involved in. So when I got the call to missions and had to give up all of that, it was not a simple task. So I think I first got the call. I didn't even know it was a call to mission service. Uh, in a dream, when I was a preteen, I remember distinctly being told that I should always keep Spanish with me because I'm going to need it. Where I'm going to take you, you're going to need Spanish. And I remember um, not understanding why, because everything I studied in school never, I always carried Spanish with me, but it was always just out there. And so it was a bit of a struggle for me because I couldn't understand what it is that God was calling me to do. Because, I'm not a preacher, I'm not the worship team leader, I am not, the Sunday school teacher, even though I've taught Sunday school. But I could not, reconcile in my head what is it that was with my educational background that God could use for his kingdom. The giftings that I have were not the typical giftings that someone who is being called to mission service would have, or we would think that it would be necessary to have in serving in this capacity. And so it was a struggle for me. I must say to you that, I had the call. I ignored the call. I sent it to voicemail. I said to God, you could not be speaking to me because I don't fit into the box that has been, described for me for many reasons. One, I'm from a third world country. Two, I don't look the part. I'm a black man. Where I've not seen a black missionary, so I don't know what that looks like. And yet the call was there. What is it that you're calling me to do? I never had anyone from Jamaica who had done something like that, because I'm the first missionary from the island of Jamaica to be sent by our church. About 2017, 2018, thereabout. I remember my prayer group and we would normally meet and we will have prayer and fasting, and we will put a list of things together that we're praying and seeking God's face for. And I remember that, I had a list of things, and one by one, all my prayers were being answered. Everything was just coming through. I had the job that I wanted, I had the car that I wanted, I had everything was just lining up with my career. And I was commanding the salary that I wanted. And I remember, even when I was putting that list together, there was the last thing I have on that list, and I still have it somewhere here. I have it to say that, Lord, I want you to use me in a way that only you can use me. I had gone through a cross-cultural program that the church has. I remember Brother Scott Armstrong had come to Jamaica and did a cross-cultural training with me, not just with me, but with persons from Jamaica there in Jamaica, and I'd participated in that, and the call was still there. And so when he called me now to say, yes, there are positions open, and we think that God is calling you to serve. I really struggled with it for years. For maybe about 3 or more years after that, there was still a struggle. But even during that time, the position that was, or the positions that were opened, I was told that they were sponsored positions, and so you'd have to raise enough funds for yourself to sustain yourself on the mission field. um, and that would be for about 2 years. And so I said, okay, great. I had a car at the time, and that I was going to sell the car and to use the money from that to sponsor my 2 years on the mission field. Lo and behold, I was being commissioned as a justice of the peace for my country. And while I was in a meeting, receiving, the documents for the office, I was at a function shaking the Minister of Justice's hand for my country, and they were in the parking lot stealing my car. And so they stole the car, and I had no means by which to to fund the mission in that case. And so that for me was a sign. I took it as to say, hey, God doesn't want me to serve as a missionary, because if he did, I've already surrendered everything to him. So why would he have allowed for my car to be stolen? And so I just put it on the back burner. A few years later, maybe about 2, 3 years later, I was contacted again by the Armstrongs to say that there are positions open, and we believe that the Lord is calling you. And so I said to them, if it is that it's God's will, he will make a way. And so, you know, did everything. And I remember what really, really confirmed for me was when I go back to that prayer list. I remember when I was struggling with it, and even to this day, I still get a little angry with my younger sister because of what she said to me. But I realized that it wasn't her who was speaking to me at that time, but the Holy Spirit through her was speaking to me. And she said, you have put all of these things before the Lord, and he went through your list. And you have always said to me from we were younger that we should be very specific when we are praying to God, because he has a very funny sense of humor. And so you put all of these things on your list, and he has granted you all of these things from the list, but you did not tell him how long you wanted to have these things for. And so he has blessed you with them. And now the last thing on the list is for you to be used in a way only he can use you. And so it involves you giving up everything else that he has blessed you with, because that's how he's going to use you. And I was angry with her. Oh my goodness, even to this day, sometimes I think about it, I'm still angry with her. But I do understand that it was the Holy Spirit speaking to her, confirming that this is what I needed to do. um, Further confirmation came when I told my parents. They were supported, they were almost expecting it. In actuality, my father came to me and he said to me, he gave me a hug at my room door, and he hugged me, squeezed me tightly, and he said to me, I thank God that he allowed me to spend the time that I have spent with you, because I knew from you were born that I would not have you very long here with me on the island. And that just gave me the confirmation, the full confirmation that I needed to go. It was almost like he gave me his blessings to go ahead. And I think I needed that. And that confirmed it. I packed my bags, left in the middle of COVID. Almost every one of the airports that I traveled through to get to Africa, everyone was asking, "Where are you going? What do you mean you're moving to Africa in the middle of a pandemic?" And I said, "Well, the Lord has called me, so I have to obey." So yeah. And for me, that was one of the biggest things that I had to do, and that I still have to do, with being called, and serving in this capacity, because I didn't want to do it, and I still don't want to do it. And that's what a lot of persons fail to understand, is that when you're serving in a strange country, when you don't have your friends, you don't have your family, you don't have anything that you are used to, you are you have to be obedient to God. Uh, Even when things are not as comfortable as you want them to be, it would be better, and it is better for us to be obedient to Him, because He will take care of us. And the final confirmation, was when, in my devotion time, He said to me, the same God that I am in Jamaica, the same God that I am when you travel to the US, the same God that I am in Africa. And so, no matter where you go, I am your God, and I will take care of you. And so, I'm content with that. Yeah. So The first time I interacted with a missionary was actually Brother Monty Sear. He came to Jamaica. I don't remember what he came for, but it was the very, very first time I interacted with a missionary. And so from that time, we have kept in contact with each other. I kept in contact with the Armstrong. Um, but in terms of mentors, I find that my local pastor at the time, Reverend Brown, my district superintendent, Reverend Ronald Gray, my second pastor after or founding pastor, retired Reverend Valen Smith, they were all very encouraging. In the sense that they gave us opportunities to showcase the giftings and talents that God had given to us. They would consciously constantly encourage us to use those giftings and talents in any form that we can. They gave us the opportunities to say, hey, here's something coming up, here's a training, here's a workshop. You find too that even the Sunday school teachers that I had back home, they were very, 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 very good, very patient, especially during my teenage years, because I was very difficult to deal with. I have a lot of questions, and when they could not answer my questions, I would, get a little annoyed, because you're an adult Christian, you should know. No, I'm an adult Christian and I still don't know. So I, 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 I remember having those individuals around me, uh, you know, saying that, trust God a little bit more. And they brought up examples, not just from the Bible, because sometimes, when you're bringing up Bible examples, they seem so far away, but you have like real life people who with real life struggles. It was good to have people who were real around me to say, hey, this is my struggle. This is what I'm dealing with. I remember one of our pastors now, Reverend Doyley. He was one of them who was very open and honest with me with issues that were there to say these are realities that we face as people who are living on earth, as Christians who are trying to navigate this space. And so it was really for me, the it was more hands-on mentorship that occurred in my life, with getting a full understanding or a better understanding of this walk with God. All right. So my missionary journey, I believe, started many, many years ago. It involved, just doing local missions around my community, in our local church, things like that. So it was as if that seed was planted many, many years ago, unbeknownst to me that it was planted there. And so the things I was involved in, helping out at the soup kitchen, or helping out at the old age home, or the places of safety for children, these types of activities, kind of spur that kind of thing in your heart, and you're like, hey, maybe I can do this. And so it it has been a little, difficult, because in many cases I was very disobedient in the call that was happening, and maybe it was just that I didn't have clarity as to what the call was, because as I said, I never saw missionaries who were serving in a capacity like I'm serving in now, and being called in this way. And so it just didn't seem as if I was being called, but I was. And so it has been a struggle, a constant struggle, back in and forthing, to say, hey, is this what I'm being called to do? This really doesn't fit in the bracket. What do I do? And so it is those types of interactions, but knowing God, spending time in His Word, asking Him to confirm certain things, and then Him not removing that desire to do His mission in this way. That's what really kept me on this missionary journey, that kept me going there. And then having people who are around you, who are praying for you, who are supporting you, who will ask you the right questions, not only in the spiritual sense, but also in the physical sense, to say, hey, I hope you're just not going crazy when you say you're giving up your job, you're, moving all the way across the world to serve in missions, but to ensure that God is truly the one calling you. And it's that you're not thinking it's a life of glitz and glamour, because it's not. but he's calling you, and if he's calling you, he's here to sustain you. So having the right people who are around you to ask the right questions really does help in answering that call, being on that mission journey. And it's being real with people for them to understand who you are, where you're coming from, why it is that you're doing this, and why do you believe that God is calling you so strongly. And so for me, it has just been an act of obedience, because if I'm being honest with you, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this thing. I could have been doing so much better in a secular job. But I know that if I should continue in my secular job, it became so heavy in my spirit that I know that if God has instructed me to do something and I don't do it, or I do the opposite of what He has asked me to do, that means I am being disobedient, and we all know that disobedience is sin. And there's no way to pretty that up. There's no way to make it sound any nicer. We try to say, yes, pray about it and stuff. But if God has told you, or as He did in my case, hey, pack up your stuff, I need you in Africa, and I sit there in Jamaica, I am living in sin. And so I could not have that resting on my conscience anymore. And so that has been how my missionary journey began. Um, in traveling to Africa, I don't think I have not had like a major culture shock. I don't know. I keep encouraging persons to come and to see the continent, because when I landed in Nairobi, Kenya is the first place I landed on the continent. And when I say to you, I was a little bit confused. I don't know if it was jet lag or what it was. But when I looked around, it wasn't until persons started to speak to me in Swahili that I realized that, oh, I'm no longer in Jamaica, because persons look like me. I was hearing Jamaican music in the airport. And so it kind of, you know, confused me for a second to say, hey, what's going on here? Why am I hearing Jamaican music here? But there's a love for Jamaica here on the continent. In every country that I've been, it's been warm, it's been welcoming. I think one of the major things that has been a culture shock for me, and I've been trying now for the past 3 years, is that I cannot find a single African that only speaks one language. It is a struggle for me. I have not met one, and I make it a deliberate. It's a deliberate question that I ask every time I travel to a new country. How many languages do you speak? And at minimum, you'll get two, three, four, some six, some eight different languages. And I'm there going, wow, look at me here, barely speaking Spanish, but and barely speaking English as well. But it's just the beauty of the continent and the beauty of the people here. One of the other things that I found that is not really a culture shock per se, but it was just so heartwarming that people are welcoming. I mean, they're so happy to share with you about their culture, and having to have a meal with them. That's one of the things too that I am struggling with here, in terms of the generosity of the people and the food that they offer to you. If you visit 13 homes in a given day, I guarantee you will have 13 meals, because they're going to insist that you eat. And you eat, even when you express to them that you have eaten already, you'll still be eating again. They feed you. But it's beautiful. It's a beautiful encounter, and I really want more persons to come and experience the continent, because for each individual, it has a different connection with them, with the people who are here, the cultures that are here. And that's another thing too. There is not just one culture on the continent. There's a multiplicity of cultures even within a country. You go a few miles or a few kilometers down the road, and you're experiencing a totally different culture than what you were just experiencing a few moments ago. And so it's having that open mind, having that experience to say that, hey, yes, there are differences, but there are in so many ways, we're more alike than we are different. I found some of the things that we have done back home in Jamaica, and with talking with some of my friends from other Caribbean islands and countries, that hey, we do the same thing back home. We might do it just a little bit differently, or operate a little bit differently, but it has the same outcome. And it's like, wow, it's just a beautiful, beautiful encounter, a beautiful experience. And I'm not just talking with persons within the church, even outside of the church, you'll find that persons are open and they're welcoming and they're warm towards you, especially if you are from the Caribbean and you know everything that has happened with how we ended up in the Caribbean. They're like, welcome home, my brother, welcome home, my sister, separate and apart from you being a child of God and being a part of the Church of the Nazarene. Persons will welcome you home to Africa. So it's been a great experience. I'm loving it. Or, so on the Africa region, we are distributed in three hubs: one in Johannesburg, South Africa, which is the southern hub, the one in Nairobi, Kenya, which is the eastern hub, and the one in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, that is the west central hub. And so my role, even though on paper I am assigned to Kenya, to Nairobi, Kenya, my role in finance has me traveling between those three hubs and those three countries. And whilst I'm there, I will travel to neighboring countries as well to see what's going on with the ministry as it pertains to finance there, and projects that we're working on as the region, and you know, projects that you would have given towards through world evangelism, through Alabaster, through NCM, those types of things. And so my role, even though on paper I'm stationed in Nairobi, has me moving right across the continent. All right, so I have done a few exciting things whilst here on the continent so far. I have gone to Table Mountain in Cape Town, South Africa. I have gone uh, tandem paragliding off the side of Signal Hill in Cape Town. I have gone hot air ballooning over the cradle of humankind here in South Africa. I have seen the last two northern white rhinos in Kenya. I have um, walked with cheetahs and pet a cheetah in Zambia. I have fed giraffes in Nairobi. I fed the northern white rhinos. One of them actually used her horn and completely scraped the side of our vehicle that we were traveling in, and I got to touch her. I have eaten a bush rat. It's called agouti. It's quite delicious. It was good. Some of the difficult uh, experiences that I've had so far, some of the challenges is, you know, uh, working through some of the problems that we are having, whether it be finance or otherwise, with some of our people to, you know, ensure that there's financial literacy in how we handle the funds in the church. I have had difficulties when traveling with some of the airlines, you know, losing luggage and uh, but overall the experience here has been good. I haven't had that many difficulties, but yeah, I think those are the two, and they're really minor in comparison to other things, but I haven't had any real challenges per se. I've had some exciting experiences with food that are here, things that I've never tried before. I've tried them, and I'll try them, you know, once or twice, and if I like them, I'll like them. But yeah, those are the challenges that I've had so far. In terms of languages that I speak, I know a little Spanish and I speak English, and I attempt to speak my Jamaican vernacular or Creole or patois, but I don't do a very good job of it. But those three is what I'd say. I have not spent much time in any one country. Um, the majority of the countries that we are in, they will speak English, Swahili, French, or Portuguese. And so I have not had an opportunity. I've picked up here and there, you know, certain words, certain greetings, but not to say I've learned any full languages as yet. Just for example, in South Africa alone, I believe they have 13 official languages, not including the other languages that are spoken by smaller people groups here in Cote d'Ivoire. I believe, even though French is the official language there, they have about 60 different languages that are spoken by the different people groups there, and all the other Bantu languages that might exist on the continent. They have their commonalities, but I have not gotten a chance to really be in one place to fully immerse in any of the languages here. All right. So if you are being called to missions in any way, shape, or form, my encouragement to anyone out there, no matter what your age is that there are people out there who need to know that Jesus is Lord, that Jesus died for them, and they are waiting to hear that from you. They're waiting for you to be obedient to God's call on your life. And your lack of obedience to God and his call on your life is resulting in them not knowing that he died for them and that he loved them. And so I want us to take some time to think about that awesome responsibility that God has called us into his family and has said to you, hey, you have a lost brother, you have a lost sister that is out there in the world who is struggling. You are my hands and my feet here. You are my voice. You are my vessels that I need you to be obedient, to go. I need you to go and share your experiences of my goodness, my faithfulness, so that they can see that I am not just some God that we speak about in a book, that their grandparents and great grandparents, that I am still alive and I'm still well and that I'm still providing and that I still care for my people. There's someone out there waiting to hear you tell them that Jesus is Lord. You might not be the one to go and say it to them directly to their faces, but based on your obedience to God in whatever capacity that He's asking you to serve, He will be glorified in doing that. All you need to do is to be obedient to His call. We hear about these things in church. We talk about them a lot to say, trust in the Lord, lead not onto your own understanding. We talk about the provisions that God makes for his people, but yet still we don't want to step out on that faith to say, hey, I am going to trust you. Even when the difficult times come, even when I am not certain as to how it is that things are going to work out, even when my car is stolen, even when my parents don't support me, even when I am in a good job and I'm okay, you could not be calling me, but He is. He's calling you to step out. He's calling you to a deeper relationship with Him. And it might not be easy, and it might not be the way that you thought your life would go. But obedience to God is the greatest thing that you can do as a child of God. And that's my encouragement to our people. If He's been calling you, and if He's calling you, be obedient to His call on your life. Okay, and so even if you're not being called physically to come, I want you to understand that we are a part of a global family. And so your contribution to WEF, you're able to fund the mission and the missionaries who are called to ensure that the word gets to every part of the world. So continue to give to WEF. I think about it and I think about my own personal experience with God. And I thank whomever it is or the group of people who gave to Alabaster so that 35 years ago, a plot of land could have been bought in the hills of St. Catherine, Jamaica, and a church planted there so that I could know that Jesus is Lord. And so I encourage persons, even if you don't feel a call to mission service, continue to give to WEF, continue to give to Alabaster, continue to give in ways that you could not imagine the work that God can do with the small amounts that we are giving globally. When He puts that down, pressed down, shaken together, it makes miracles happen right across this world. I hope to see you in June 2024. I should be there on the Trinidad and Tobago district speaking for home assignment. I hope to interact with you all there. And in Jamaica, when we say see you, we say walk good. And so I'll say to you, walk good.